I'm Jane Copier, and you're listening to Happy in the Middle, a podcast for Christian women who want to make the second half of life the best half. This podcast is all about helping women to reignite their spark and step into their divine power in order to create deep and connected relationships and also find that fulfillment and satisfaction they crave. So, if you're ready to grow, join me and learn how you too can overcome guilt, resentment, disappointment, and enjoy the fruits of creating a life well lived. Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Happy in the Middle. Today is episode number 120. This is part 2 of our attachment styles. And we're going to talk about, hey, now that I know what I am and what my husband is or where I lie in my nervous system response, what do I do with that information? So today we're going to talk about how each style interacts and responds in relationship to each other. And I'm also going to give you some really good, helpful exercises to get you moving to a more securely attached space. Before we dive in, I do want to clarify something really important. When you're learning about attachment styles or any other personality or nervous system traits, whether it's the Enneagram, human design, love languages, whatever it is, right? The tendency for all of us is to start labeling other people, especially our spouse. So I really want to caution you that this is a slippery slope, because when we label someone or put them in a box or categorize them, right, it tends to put us in our own minds, even if it's a subconscious, it puts us in a one-up or a superior position. And that is not the point of this information. Okay. When this happens, instead of being a lover and a friend, it's really easy to become your partner's self-improvement coordinator and try to fix them. And no one wants to feel deficient or like they need fixing. They don't want to be your project. This will only add to the conflict you're already experiencing. These tools are useful in helping you to understand your spouse better. And yes, knowing more can help you make better choices about the way that you interact with them. Okay, but to be clear, this is not information that you should ever weaponize in any way in order to make your partner feel defective or less than. Accepting your partner as they are, who they are, loving them unconditionally, that is the greatest gift you can give to a human being. And it's not only for them, but it's also for yourself, right? It's only from that place of love that your partner will ever have any desire to change. So as you're considering what you're going to take from what I'm going to share with you today, please understand that this is your work every bit as much as it is your partner's, to collaborate together, to create a healthy, beautiful dynamic. It is teamwork. And that teamwork might mean at times that you do the heavy lifting, and other times your partner may need to carry you. But keeping score, assigning labels, looking down on your partner for not experiencing the world in the way that you do is not the path to a successful relationship. Okay, I feel so much better to get that off my chest. I just feel like it's just so super important that we all understand this before we move forward. Okay. So last week, we talked about the 4 nervous system attachment styles, and I'm just going to recap them quickly for those of you who haven't heard the last week's episode. But honestly, if you haven't listened to that, it's episode number 119. If you haven't listened to that one yet, it might be good to pause here, go back and listen to that one first, and then come back. But let me give you a quick recap of the 4 different attachment styles. First, we have our secure attachment individuals. These are the people who feel completely supported and trusting. Their life experience taught them that people are always there for them and that they are worthy of love. They are, as the title suggests, secure in themselves. They have a healthy self-concept, and they're secure in relationship to other people. Okay, this is kind of the goal that we all striving to be. Okay, and then we have our anxious attachment friends. And these are our friends that grew up with a lot of unpredictability. Their needs were only met some of the time, so they seek constant reassurance, and they fear abandonment. They don't always feel worthy of love because that messaging for them while growing up was so mixed, right? So they pursue validation. They pursue being loved at a high level. Okay, next we have our fearful avoidants. And these are our friends who grew up with both fear and love, but it wasn't ever real consistent, right? This lack of consistency causes fearful avoidance to adopt the belief that I can't rely on other people to take care of me. So who can I ever trust? Right? Their core fear is betrayal in the sense that if I love you, you can hurt me. I feel like you could betray my love, right? This style has both anxious and avoidant tendencies. And then finally, we have our dismissive avoidance. These are our friends who learned very early on that there was no one that was going to take care of their basic needs, and their emotions were not tolerated. So they subconsciously pull the plug on emotions and they focus on self reliance, right? They work hard. They're very successful typically. The needs of a partner are quite annoying to them because they think everyone ought to be as self reliant as they are. Their partner's emotions are a huge inconvenience, and they're also a threat to their values as a human because it hits at their core fear of not being worthy of love or care at all. So, understanding how attachment styles interact can be incredibly eye opening for couples. If we take this information and use it in a way to better understand that often the pain in relationships is not because people don't love each other, it's because their attachment strategies collide, it can be a valuable tool for creating better love, more understanding, and a healthier dynamic between you. Okay, so as we've already discussed, each attachment style developed as a way to protect the self from emotional pain. It's a nervous system response. And when two partners with different strategies or styles come together, those styles can unintentionally trigger each other. So let's look at what these dynamics often look like in real life. So the first one, let's talk about anxious attachment and dismissive avoidant people when they combine together in a romantic pair. And by the way, statistically, this is the most common pairing that coaches and therapists see, the anxious and the dismissive avoidant. Okay. Julie Manano describes this as the pursue and withdraw cycle. So here is what triggers each partner. For the anxious partner, they become triggered when there is a slow response to texts. Okay. They're often needing quick reassurance. Okay. They're very triggered when there's emotional distance. The silent treatment or stonewalling for the anxious type is incredibly painful. And because they often come across as needy, when their partner declines to give them reassurance, it's just excruciating. It feels like it's intentional. It feels like an intentional withholding of love. And it's hard for them when their partner needs space because of their high need to be in close proximity with them to feel secure. Okay, so all of these attachment styles, the anxious, the fearful avoidant, the dismissive avoidant, these are all not to be condescending, but just factual, right? These are all sort of immature ways of operating in the world because we haven't pressured ourselves to really look at the way we operate and pressure ourselves to move forward to be more secure. So when we talk about these and put them in relationship with one another, judgment does not belong here, right? We don't want to judge, but what we want to do is to understand and encourage. Okay. So that's the anxious attachment in response to the dismissive avoidant. Now let's look at the dismissive avoidant triggers, right? And it makes sense why these couples struggle because dismissive avoidants get triggered when they feel pressured to talk. And of course, the anxious attached person really wants to talk a lot, right? That's very assuring to them. Dismissive attached people are also very triggered when their partner displays a lot of emotion. Remember, they've shut down emotion. They don't want to go there. They don't want to live in that space. So it's very, very annoying when other people are very emotional. Criticism triggers massive defensiveness in dismissive avoidance because it touches on their deepest fear of being deficient or unworthy, unlovable. They're also super triggered when they feel like their partner is trying to control them. Because of their strong self-reliance, they really hate feeling obligated to anyone and they do not like to be controlled. They want to manage their calendar. They don't want to be controlled or managed by anyone. So let's use this in a real life example. Let's use Anna and Mark. Let's say Anna's the anxious one and Mark is the dismissive avoidant. Okay. So maybe Anna says something like, "We never talk anymore. Why don't you care about working on our relationship?" Her husband, Mark, who's dismissive avoidant, hears that as criticism and he feels overwhelmed by it. Mark shuts down and he says something like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Right? He doesn't even want to comprehend that part of this could be true because that would be admitting that he's deficient in some way, right? So when he shuts down, Anna interprets that as rejection. And then she escalates. "You always ignore me." This kind of escalation makes Mark retreat even further, probably to the garage, right? Or to his phone, or he'll go to work. He'll just do something, anything to get away, go for a run, go to the gym. And then both partners feel hurt. Anna feels abandoned, Mark feels attacked, and they have a very, very difficult time coming together again with any new understanding. As Sue Johnson famously teaches, she said, "The problem isn't the partner, the problem is the cycle." And this is a painful cycle of the anxious attached and the dismissive avoidant. Okay. So, how can couples like these move toward more secure attachment? Well, the key shift is revealing the vulnerable emotion underneath the reaction. Okay. So, I'll say that again because it's a lot to take in. Okay. So, what we have to do is reveal that vulnerable emotion underneath the reaction. So it's learning to say things in a new way. And for Anna, it would be more effective for her to say, "When we don't talk, I start to feel disconnected from you." Notice she's not attacking, she's not blaming him. Instead, she's sharing how she is feeling. She's not making any requests, she just gives him information about her. And for Mark, because she's not making a demand, it gives him a choice. He can give her more, which is his choice, and that is okay. He'll feel much happier about giving to her rather than her needing something from him. But for Mark, instead of withdrawing, he might respond by calming himself for a moment and then saying, "I want to talk about this. I just need a few minutes to settle down first, so I'm going to go for a walk, but I'll be back in 10 minutes and then we can talk, okay?" So this kind of communication for an anxious avoidant person is super helpful. That assurance that he's going to be back soon will create safety in Anna instead of that escalation. In order for these two types to work well together, both need to understand their partner's nervous system better and then modify the way that they react and the way that they bid for connection. Okay, let's move on to the fearful avoidant and the dismissive avoidant. This combination can feel particularly confusing because the fearful avoidant wants closeness, but is also afraid of too much closeness. And the dismissive avoidant protects themselves by staying emotionally distant. And when you have two avoidants that fear conflict, it is much easier to sort of sweep things under the rug, keep things at surface level. But that is a recipe for deep resentment and anger to grow, so that when they do fight, it can be pretty explosive. But let's look at their triggers. Fearful avoidant people get triggered when they feel ignored. Remember, they want someone to hear them, to validate their emotion, right? They're triggered when their partner dismisses them or invalidates their emotion, and which is famous for dismissive avoidance, right? They do not want to deal with emotions. It's beyond their depth. And this makes those fearful avoidants feel a deep sense of betrayal because the one person that they trust to love and care for them isn't willing to give them what they need in the moment or to acknowledge their emotions or to let them know that they matter. It's also triggering when their partner withdraws from them. So for the fearful avoidant, when their partner withdraws, it feels again like betrayal, and that is their core fear. So when they dismiss their needs, make them feel like they don't matter, that they're unimportant, those are the triggers for the fearful avoidant. Dismissive avoidant triggers in this particular dynamic are when their partner displays strong emotion. Remember, they have shut down all those emotions. This is particularly unsettling for them. They get triggered when they're asked to share their feelings Why would they ever want to talk about feelings? They don't even want to acknowledge that they exist, right? It's a deep, deep pain for them. So their brain is telling them, do not talk about emotions. It will kill you. We will die. It's also triggering when their partner wants to talk about the relationship. They say things, why can't you just be happy? I do all these things, but nothing is ever enough. They don't want to talk about the relationship because it's an opportunity for criticism. They'll find out what they're doing wrong, and that is terribly, terribly painful. They get super triggered when they feel they're being blamed. Deep down, they feel so flawed. And their biggest fear is that one day their partner is going to wake up and see all of those flaws and leave. So let's look at an example of, let's say, Sarah and David. Let's say Sarah is the fearful avoidant and David is the dismissive. And Sarah might say, I feel like you don't care that this matters to me. And her husband, David, who's the dismissive, feels then accused. Instead of just taking it in, like a secure person would say, and say, oh, that's interesting that she feels that way. I wonder why, and get curious. Instead, it feels like an accusation. Oh, I have done something wrong. So he might respond with, why are you always creating problems? We have a good life. Why can't you just be happy? Right? And then Sarah experiences that response as a betrayal. So then she pushes harder emotionally. But when that doesn't work, because remember, emotions are not welcome for a dismissive avoidant. When she sees that doesn't work, she suddenly withdraws herself. She feels hopeless. She thinks things like, forget it. Why do I try? I shouldn't have said anything. Right? And now both partners retreat emotionally. Both go quiet, both stonewall. The relationship feels distant and confusing and unresolved. So, how does this couple move towards security? It's really, really important for the fearful avoidant Sarah to learn how to express her needs without accusation. So, for example, she might say something like, I feel closest to you when we spend time talking together. That just makes me feel so loved, right? She's keeping it all about her. She's saying, you are important to me. You are lovable, instead of you're doing it all wrong. That is a much more welcome phrase. And it's also important for the dismissive avoidant David to learn to stay present during her emotional moments. Instead of running or trying to dismiss or escape, he does not have to agree with her emotions, right? They don't have to make sense to him. But if he wants to move closer and restore connection, he needs to learn to say something like, I hear you. It must be really hard to feel that way. I care that you're hurting because you matter to me. That's all the fearful avoidant needs to hear, that they acknowledge their emotions. They don't have to be agreed with. They just need to know that you care that they are hurting, right? That would go really far in bringing them closer together. All of these little moments of deeper self-regulation build safety in the nervous system. So the more that we can give that to our partner, the better. Okay, let's move on to our last dynamic, and that is the anxious attached and the fearful avoidant. This pairing often creates really intense emotional swings. The anxious partner is in constant pursuit of closeness, and the fearful avoidant alternates between wanting closeness and needing time alone. So their dynamic can be very emotional, very up and down. It's not consistent. So let's look at their triggers in this partnership. The anxious partner gets super triggered when there are mixed signals, right? I want to be close to you, but I also need time away from you. Remember, that anxious partner became anxious because of that dynamic. They did not have consistency when they were little. So this feels like a trigger for them. It's also a trigger when there's emotional withdrawal. This feels like abandonment to them. So the silent treatment, the stonewalling feels incredibly painful. They're also triggered when there's uncertainty about the relationship. If ever that fearful avoidant were to say something like, I just don't think this is going to work, their brain goes completely to catastrophe. We're divorcing. It's never going to work. They're very insecure about having someone there that they can count on. So that's incredibly upsetting for them. For the fearful avoidant in this relationship, their triggers are feeling engulfed, right? The neediness of the anxious partner feels overwhelming. It feels smothering. Because remember, as much as they want closeness, they also need time to themselves. They also fear betrayal because Anxious partners' emotions are so big and so consuming, the fearful avoidant feels uncared for. It feels like it's all about the anxious attached person. They also get really triggered by their partner's fear of rejection. They feel pressured to be their full emotional support. It's overwhelming again. And feeling overly needed, right? This builds that resentment. Because remember, the fearful avoidant needs to feel like their feelings matter too. And when there's an imbalance, they feel betrayed. Okay. So here's what this relationship can look like. Let's use the example of Michelle and Jason. Let's say Michelle is anxious and she says, I miss you. Let's spend more time together. Well, at first, Jason, who's the fearful avoidant, agrees. He's like, "Yes, I want closeness too, right? Let's spend more time together." So then Michelle begins planning lots of different activities. She fills their calendar. She proudly brings it to Jason and shares all these wonderful plans, who then becomes very anxious about all of this closeness. He feels smothered. He's like, "Oh my goodness, there goes all of my free time. I don't have any time to myself to think, to just breathe, to kind of regulate myself." So then he finds an excuse to cancel some of them, or he becomes distant when they're out together because he'd rather be doing something else, right? This feels incredibly devastating to Michelle because she doesn't understand the reluctance to be with her. She pursues harder, which then makes Jason withdraw even further, right? It is a push pull dynamic and it becomes emotional volatile. So, how do these two move toward secure attachment? It's really essential that both partners in this dynamic learn emotional regulation. The anxious partner needs to learn to calm their nervous system on their own instead of pursuing their partner to relieve their anxiety. It's a healthy self-concept. It is learning to spend time alone and not be anxious about that. The fearful avoidant needs to learn to communicate more clearly and also practice staying present instead of disappearing. When they're tempted to run or stonewall or get cold and give the cold shoulder, staying present and staying in that space, even if you don't agree, is super important. Consistency in this dynamic is what will become the healing factor. The good news, my friends, with all of these dynamics is that attachment styles are not permanent, right? They can be shifted. And for those who desire to make that shift, all of these combinations can be great partnerships, but it does take work. So now that we've covered what the insecure attachments look like when paired together, let's talk a little about what happens when a secure attachment individual pairs with an insecure attached person. When a secure partner is in a relationship, things often stabilize. I've seen this hundreds of times working with my clients, right? And this is why I say so often that it only takes one person to shift and make a change in a relationship. It's true. Of course, it's easier if both people are committed to making changes, but it's not required, especially in the beginning. Because here's what happens. Secure partners naturally assume goodwill. They naturally communicate openly. They repair conflict quickly. And they tolerate emotional conversations. They can hang in there when things get tough. Their calm nervous system can help regulate the other partner, right? Because rather than being reactive, they can be soothing. They can bring sanity into what feels like craziness, right? These secure reactions are super soothing to the dysregulated partner. I will say that even secure partners must set some boundaries, or their own secure state can shift as well. They can become anxious, they can become avoidant. They cannot carry the entire emotional work of the relationship. So at some point, if you are an insecure person in your relationship, you must pressure yourself to make some meaningful changes too. So I want to give you some helpful exercises that will help you move the needle to becoming more securely attached. And the first one is just to slow down the conflict cycle. Instead of reacting immediately when you feel triggered, learn to pause, learn to breathe, learn to recognize the pattern. Okay, when you see it, name it. Oh, we're in our pursue withdraw cycle again. Here we go again, right? This is the cycle. Remember, it's not the person, it's not the partner that's the problem, it's the cycle that's the problem. So we have to shift the cycle. And slowing down and pausing before you react is a way to shift that cycle. When you state it in that way, that it's the cycle that is the problem, that awareness alone reduces blame, and that will create a better environment for conversation. Okay, the second thing to do is to share vulnerable emotions. You guys, beneath every angry reaction is usually a softer emotion. Anger feels stronger in our bodies, it feels more powerful, and that's why we use anger so frequently. But discovering what's beneath the anger is super important. So think about it next time this comes up for you. What is that emotion for you? And I want to be clear about what vulnerability actually is. Sometimes when I talk about vulnerability with my clients, they believe that I am asking them to share everything. They think I want them to go to their partner and just divulge all their deepest, darkest thoughts, bare their soul. That is really not the definition of vulnerability. It could be, but that's not what we're asking for here. What vulnerability actually is giving what you can when you can. And that's it. Being willing to try. So it might be a sentence here. It might be a confession there, right? Just small things, right? A description of what's happening in your body, a thought that you might be having. Just sharing yourself with your partner, that is vulnerability. And it's those little bites of the cookie that actually help you get to the goal. So find the emotion behind your anger, right? And then allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable. Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it loneliness? Is it longing? What is it? And can you share that emotion with your partner? You could say something like, I know I sound really angry, but actually, I'm just afraid. I'm afraid of where we're at. I'm afraid of where this conversation is going. Or, you know what? I'm just feeling really sad. I'm really sad because I love you and I love me and I don't want us to fight. And sometimes because I don't know how to express that, it comes out like anger and I'm sorry for that. Right. Or it can be, I'm just feeling so lonely. I know I sound angry, but that's not it. I'm not angry. I am lonely. Right. Just clarifying and bringing language to the conversation that helps your partner better understand. I love Julie Manano's book. Inside, she says, secure communication happens when couples learn to express the feeling underneath the reaction. That's exactly what we're talking about. It's 100% correct. It helps your partner sort through their own thoughts when you are more clear about what's happening inside of you. Okay, the third exercise I want to recommend for you is that you create reliable connection. Secure attachment grows through these small, consistent moments. Things like checking in on a daily basis, right? Listening without interrupting. This is one of my pet peeves. I hate it when I'm sharing something really deep with my husband and he'll be like, oh, hey, look over there, squirrel. Like that is really hard for me. I like to be heard, and most people do. We want to be listened to. We don't want to be interrupted while we're in the middle of sharing something important. So resist the urge to interrupt, even if you see something really cool. Okay. Offer reassurance, validate feelings, right? Those are things that you can do daily to help connect. Turning toward emotional bids instead of dismissing or avoiding them. Like when your partner says, hey, we need to spend more time together, get curious. What kind of time are you talking about, honey? What is it that you feel like that you need? Right? Hear your partner out, listen to them, show them that they matter. Okay. You could do a 10-minute connection practice every evening where you just ask, hey, what was the best part of your day? What was the hardest part of your day? What made you laugh? What made you upset? Just get to know them, show them that you care about their life experience, right? And the only rules for this is there's just no fixing, there's no giving advice. We just listen. This is a simple practice that builds that emotional attunement. Okay, and finally, the thing that I recommend is to repair quickly after conflict. All couples fight. We all do this, right? But healthy couples know how to repair. It matters what you do after the fight. So, some simple repair statements would be, I got defensive earlier. I'm sorry. Or, I want to understand what you're feeling. Or something simple like, you matter to me. Repair is one of the strongest predictors of long term relationship success. There needs to be a resolution. Because if you just sweep things under the rug and you move on without repair, the intensity of your next conflict will be far greater because it's burdened by that unresolved anger and resentment. There's so much building up there. Remember, my friends, the ultimate goal for anyone with an insecure attachment is just to earn secure attachment. Sue Johnson says that secure relationships are built when partners repeatedly experience three things. Number one, accessibility. Are you there for me? Number two is responsiveness. Do you respond when I reach out? And number three is engagement. Are you emotionally present? Will you engage with me? Will you come toward me? Can we work together? Over time, these experiences teach the nervous system a new message, the message that connection is safe. That's what we all want to feel. When that belief becomes internalized, people who once struggled with insecurity can grow into really deep, stable, loving partners. And that connection can be so deep because of what you've gone through together, the things that you've learned together over time, right? We learn that this relationship is safe. There's nothing better in the world. Okay, my friends, that's what I have for you today. I hope this has been informative and helpful. If you're walking through these struggles in your own life, I would love to help. Please reach out and book a free call with me. Let's help you heal and become more securely attached. And please share this episode with your friends and family who might need it too. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Hey, if you are ready to get unstuck and make your midlife amazing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And I want to invite you to join my Empty Nest Academy, where you will learn how to transform your mind, your relationships, and your life. Come free yourself of regret and disappointment and be so much happier. Listen, sis, we've got one shot at this big, beautiful life. Let's make it amazing. Go to janecopier.com, that's JaneCopier.com, and sign up today. And if you're not sure what's right for you, book a free consultation with me and we'll talk it over together. And we'll make sure to get you on the path that serves you the best. See you inside.